Okay, hi guys, we're back again with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the true self and the false self, or the true image and the false image. And this is a term that psychoanalysts and psychologists use to describe the autonomous self, the self that comes on impulse, and the self that we tend to build as a mask, as a kind of defense mechanism to protect a vulnerable, shattered, ill-formed version of ourselves, or the true self. Sometimes it's just better to have a general reading with associations and references from different places, so it's more universal and different people can relate at the same time.
Good one.
Let's go.
Hey. And you know my battery said as well. Let's start with identity.
If you just want to tell the viewers at home that are watching just a little bit about your background, you know, like where you're from, if you have any siblings and stuff like that. So,
Well, I'm from London, South London. I used to teach art and design, and I do design and creative direction.
wonderful, amazing, amazing. See what I mean? You're talented and creative, so I was right.
As an interdisciplinary artist, it's taken quite a long time for me to actually even give myself that kind of a title and know what it is I actually do, because I think for a long time I was trying to do things to make other people feel comfortable. There we go, now we're getting to it.
Did you find out, or did you come to the point of realizing that maybe your childhood or you growing up kind of affected or had an impact on what you were going through at that point?
So, where do we begin? The first stages of our life are very, very crucial in the development of our core self, our character and our personality. Our core self, who we are, our personality, how we express that. And as children, our caregivers are the first models of what we can become and how we interact with different people, how we manage life, and how we kind of maneuver through the journey of life, how we manage ourselves and how we express ourselves. So we use our parents as examples. Our parents are like gods to us as children, and we use them as examples of how to kind of become adults, really, or how to just be human beings. And we all know it's not easy being a parent. As children, we don't choose to be born. Every child is different, and as a former teacher, I know that going into a lesson, each child performs differently, each child responds to the curriculum differently, each child expresses differently, so you have to teach each student differently. So with parents, they're having these children who they are bonded to naturally because they've given birth to them and they've made them, and they are in the form or in the image of them. So they're mini-me's, literally mini-me's. And parents try their best to raise them in a way that they feel is best, depending on what they know and the education they have. Sometimes when children are growing up, at the first stages of their lives, the true self, which is the autonomous self, let me give you an example. If you watch kids playing around, you'll see them just doing whatever they want to do. They say what they want, they jump, they scream, they laugh. There is no filter. They're not thinking about what you're thinking about them. They're being themselves. If they like to whine and dance, if they like to play fight, if they like to scribble, if they like to scream and jump, that's what they're gonna do, because there are no qualms. They're not thinking about, oh, if I do this, is Sophie gonna think this? Or is Trauma not gonna like me? They're not necessarily thinking about that first. They're kind of just wanting to do their thing, because it's a natural instinct to just be, to be alive and to express. Now there can be an interruption with this when the environments that we grow up in have dysfunctions here and there that make us switch a little bit, and we tend to pick up cues from our parents or from the environment that make us want to switch up and perform a type of personality or character as a survival mechanism. Okay, let's take psychology out the way for a minute, because I know people best relate when you give them personal experiences and personal examples. So I'll use myself as an example. Diaspora Diaries, for those of you who can relate. My parents weren't born in this country, and they came here in the late 80s. My dad was an international student, and he had married my mum, who he'd met in Nigeria, who was a travelling performer. So we have a young couple who are creative, who are in a new country, away from their families, away from their siblings and their friends and their normal way of life, and they're adjusting, and then they've had children. My dad, he was teaching songwriting, he was running a church, he was a choir master, and we grew up on stage, so we performed all the time. So we were always going to different events and like being in the public eye. So the idea of preparing yourself all the time to kind of sing and to entertain, the side effects that, you know, children can go through when they're exposed to those kind of things at an early age. I think it's good to be able to have that opportunity, because I wouldn't really be the person I am today. But for me personally, I didn't have a real personality. I kind of felt like I was supposed to be a certain person, and it conflicted with my identity, and there were certain things I wasn't sure about, or I knew who I was, but I knew that the person that I had to be, you know, respectful, always saying the right thing, you know, saying hi to aunties, and, you know, even when you don't want to do, you know, I think it was difficult for me. So there's so many adjustments that the children are having to make, or I felt like I had to make. So the true self, the false self, the true self, the autonomous self, me as a child, oh my God, I was the lover archetype. I was sensitive, I was sentimental, I loved communication, I loved people. I just wanted to be around everyone. I'd embrace anyone. I just wanted to be friends with everyone. I just wanted to meet new people. I loved communication. And growing up, I was also the Amazonian archetype. So I was very type A, literally. I had an idea and I went for it. I went out on my own. I was very independent, carefree. Whatever I thought, I said. Who was stopping me? No one. Literally, until the day it dawned on me that I was being affected by external voices and external thoughts that were challenging my archetype, they were challenging my personality, and they were challenging my identity. And this triggered me to the point that I'd become mute. I stopped speaking. Hopefully, can it even pick up? Is it even picking up my voice? Okay, so we're back in the building. I'm gonna wrap this up real quick because it's getting a bit exhausting. I think it was difficult for me, and going from that to school with the other 13-year-olds, I read a lot as well when I was younger, because my dad was a teacher and he had Saturday school, so I was always exposed to education and like African history. So I felt like I knew more than the average teenager at the time, and I felt like I was put back in school. I just kind of felt like I couldn't I couldn't express myself. I wasn't being stretched, and I think that affected me a lot, because it made me I felt like I was regressing. I was like becoming younger and younger just to make people feel comfortable with me, and I felt like I grew up putting on different identities based on what people thought was good. So if I did something and someone says to me, oh, that's good, I'll remember it and I'll do it again, smiling at the right time, saying thank you, please, or like having certain conversations or dressing a certain way. And I think years down the line I realised that I was acting for so many years, and that the person that was me, I realised that anytime she came out, it was reprimanded, like, what's that? That's not you. And in my head I'm thinking, no, that's me. And it's difficult being told, don't be you, do the other ones, and then we'll be okay. So it's like dealing with that on a small scale, in families, in communities, in religion, in culture, and then being that person in a Eurocentric country. It's really difficult, because you're dealing with loads of different identities, and you want to assimilate, you want to blend in and become part of that culture so that you can exist and you can function and you won't feel like you're the other. But then when you go home and you know that that's not you, like even just the concept of like having my hair straight sometimes, I don't mind it. To me it's just hair, like, but I know that in certain environments people prefer that to the hair that comes out of me naturally. Listen, I'm going to be doing deep core therapy treatments, so you can get your curls nice and zhuzhed.
So it all just kind of gets too much, and it kind of feels like you're being two people in just in just this one body, which can be cause quite a great conflict.
Also taken into consideration that there were culture clashes, because my parents had come from Nigeria and they were raising us in a British country with completely different social mores and social norms. What do you mean? And I realised that, if you take on different identities as a coping mechanism.
What?
And then you realise when you go home that you don't feel like that's you.
WTF.
And there's a person there that isn't growing and evolving. Also taking into consideration the generational gap.
We're going to a restaurant. What smells so nice?
And then in the peer groups, I'm dealing with people telling me that my skin isn't light enough, or my nose is flat, or it's called obby blobby, rubber lips, flat nose, flat chest. So people were just letting me know through their actions that I was undesirable, I was unattractive, and I was an other, and I needed to find a bin and dive in nose first. And I was just like, okay, cool, so what we're gonna do? Like, this is just me. You should accept and respect who I am.
That's right.
And I'll respect you. But I think people don't understand the concept of respect in terms of appreciating different people's cultures.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm such an advocate for therapy, because these are the kind of things you can unpack and really unravel them. So we take on behaviours to deal with situations, and the ones I'd taken on for so many years were really negative, and they were causing me like to have bad relationships, or to not be able to function in society properly, or to deal with myself, you know, just not being able to be yourself. That's all it really is. But when you have all these words, it gets confusing. And I think in medical health confuses people in general, and we need to like simplify things so that people won't get freaked out.
Now that's a good one.
Okay, so I had some technical difficulties, but I'm back.
Watch my live stream.
I don't want to spend too much time on this one, so we're going to round up. So we've discussed primary caregivers, archetypes, we've discussed home environments, so adolescence, peer pressure, and society's social constructs. The last few things that I remember affected me personally were, as an adolescent, body shape, okay? As a young girl, I was as flat as a skateboard, flat chest, flat bum. And to be honest, I was cool that I didn't really know that there was supposed to be an issue. I didn't really see the problem. But then when I started being called flat chested by the girls and the boys, and I realised that there was a stage in my life where apparently I was supposed to be performing for the opposite sex in order to attract them so they would come towards me, and then you'd have a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. So I wasn't really schooled in the whole non-platonic situations with the opposite sex, and I wasn't really on the whole performance thing, and because I didn't have the stereotypically feminine shape, I didn't have the curves, and I wasn't full and voluptuous in the right places, I was doomed in my head, and I was becoming affected by the external voices that were telling me that I wasn't good enough. And then to go to primary school and secondary school, and I'm introducing myself, hi, I'm Obi, and people are calling me, even teachers, Obi, and people are basically showing me a type of arrogance where they're saying, you must be wrong about your name, I should know better. And it's like this assumption that because my name isn't English, that you would know best how to pronounce my African name. People still do it to this day, and it shocks me. It's like you would change Obi to Obi, but you wouldn't change Tom to Tome, or Jack to Jake, or Sam to Same. You wouldn't do it. And I was also being reminded that the attributes that I had, the attributes that were associated with the archetype that I was, were more associated with masculinity and boyhood and boy activities. So things like being confident and assertive and having my ideas and wanting to go for it and not being afraid, those weren't stereotypically feminine traits. So it was almost like, what do you think you're doing? So some of the boys found that intimidating, and some of the girls were kind of like, who does she think she is, kind of thing. So I was stuck between both worlds. And then I found myself dealing with gender dysphoria, where I was coming to terms with a social construct of gender which is attributed to female-bodied human beings and male-bodied human beings, that the things that they say we're supposed to be doing, and then I just didn't get it. So you're saying that I have to become a housewife with kids just because I'm a girl, or I have to act like this because I'm a girl, and I was so confused. So I began performing a false self. I became a tomboy, a muted tomboy. I hunched my back over, I was walking like this with my tracksuit bottoms, performing a masculine gender in a way to protect myself, to protect maybe my mom and my sister, or protect femininity as a whole. And it's like, she's too masculine. Right, you want to be masculine? Let's fight. What's my masculinity got to do with you? Because it's good to be able to see yourself in something. Everyone needs a narrative. You watch the TV and you see stories that relate to you. Like, people go to the movies so they can understand stories, they can understand their emotions, they can understand their visions and what they want to do in life. And when you search for your own narrative, it makes sense, but if it's not available, you feel like you don't exist. I just think that if you've internalized like negative narratives about yourself, it's a psychological thing. It's like being brainwashed, so you start believing things that aren't true. I'd internalized these things to the point where I became them, and I looked like a thing. I looked like something that you couldn't put words to, just true sadness and trauma and loneliness. And I had a major existential crisis. For the most of my life I had an existential crisis, like, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to be? Everything says I'm not good enough. And then I had the issue with racism and colorism. So racism, colorism and sexism. My neighbours are calling me a nigger and spitting on my back and throwing mud on my walls and chasing me after school and ending up in fights where the police would come and go to the neighbour's house and then come to us and say there's no smoke without fire. I remember when things would happen, we would call the police and the police would go to the people's house that attacked us, sit down, do tea, biscuits, pounded yam, and then come and knock on the door and say to us, there's no smoke without fire.
With very dogs and snuffling boys, I find my rest outside, squeezed between the hind.
They spat on me, they called me a nigger, they threw mud on me, like, for a long time.
Game over. I'm the man with a stitch through my nose.
Acceptance is just knowing that this is now, what can we do for the future? And I think it's important, it's really important, because if you're not accepting your reality, then you're a bit deluded, and then that's what makes it difficult. But like what you were just explaining, like having analogies, I think that African culture, like they always say proverbs, these are analogies. I feel like we need to get back in touch with our own cultures.
OMG.
Sometimes when you're in someone else's culture for so long, you start to forget how important your own culture is.
Yes.
And you start thinking that it's second best. It's not, it's you. So it's number one. Like, even watching like Nollywood movies and stuff, like it's my mum. My mum is she's African, like she's like Igbo, like she's, you know, everything I know about my culture in terms of like being an Igbo woman is because of her. Like, and every time I go through something, it's her voice in my head. Like she'll say something and it's like, even if she says it in Igbo, or you know, she's just cute about things. It's like, okay, mum said this, okay, now I get it. You know, you start seeing things differently when you remember where you're from. Like, my mum is literally a gangster.
100%.
She's a finesse chick, though I'm not gonna lie, but she's a gangster. Like, you're not gonna play your mum, and you're like, most people are lucky she's a Christian because it would have been for a lot of people. People don't get it. And to just remember that everyone's human, and it kind of gives you an agency to start figuring out things for yourself. So I did like my research, I watched a lot of films, I read a lot of like articles and essays and stuff, and I would come back to the doctor and say, what about this? And they were like, not sure, da, da, da. Then I go to the therapist and she'd be like, I think you're all right, like, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, no, that's because we're in this room and I trust you, like you can see me. Because I've always been told along the line, like, oh, you're not black enough, you think you're too nice, or you act white, or I make them feel uncomfortable. Or is that this feeling that people expect me to not like myself?
I'm offended.
Where'd you get that one from? We live in this kind of society where we expect things to be like really one-dimensional, and like we adhere to that, and we regurgitate the same things that don't work. So our society is quite dysfunctional, and if there aren't enough images of like, or representations of your narrative, it's going to be a bit difficult to kind of be who you really want to be, because the world is telling you that basically we don't want you around. Because you can die spiritually, emotionally, mentally, you know, the whole shebang. It doesn't make sense. Like, we don't get taught enough about like violence in general. Violence, emotional violence, spiritual violence, physical violence. We only get taught a lot about physical violence, but not about the rest. And I think what we need to do is like educate ourselves properly about boundaries, identity, you know, self-respect, self-worth, so that you would know what not to allow into your life. Their difference doesn't take away from you. It's almost a way to make people come together. Their difference is like a conversation starter. Oh, you're from so-and-so country, or you speak a certain language, or you do this, you do that. Oh, amazing. As long as you know, if you know yourself, yeah, that is a really good starter. The suicide starts inside because you're taught to hate yourself. You're taught to kind of doubt yourself, to feel shame.
Quickly ask you some 4 questions about you and your time in Peckham. Is that cool, yeah?
Okay, what's it for again?
We're just getting an insight into just people around the area, really. And yeah, you know, you're in Peckham, you hang out in Peckham. So first of all, what's your name?
Giovanni.
Giovanni, yeah. How old are you?
16.
16. Cool. And your name was Giovanni, yeah? Giovanni.
It was going to be darker.
But you're recording.
I couldn't access it. I didn't have the skills to access it. I didn't have the emotional literacy to access it. I didn't have the words for how I felt. Also, the voices in your head that talk crap to you, which are obviously the voices that you're probably growing up hearing around you. Oh, shut up, what are you talking about now? That's not your voice, no, whatever, man. All those things that people have said, they stick. They always say sticks and stones can break bones, but words kill, words can kill. Like, so the voices are in your head, and it's like, my therapist would say, okay, whose voice is that? And I have to identify the voice, so that every time it comes back, I'll be like, no, actually, that's not true. And knowing whose voice it was. Yeah. I mean, it's a long journey sometimes, it's very difficult, but it's worth it, you know, and it helps you put that value back on yourself. And one thing I realized along the way is that on the journey of like self-development, you begin to realize that this is not about blame. This is just about focusing on making yourself the best version of yourself that you could possibly be, because time is not waiting for you. All the people that you have bad memories of that did so and so when you were younger, they're not thinking about you now. They're probably forgotten about you. So it's like best to, you know, put that cape on and just fly, win, become a superwoman, become a superman, and do, or super person rather, and just do what's best for yourself. Because believe it or not, sometimes the support systems we feel we have just don't exist, and we need to find those ones and find safe spaces and continue in them so we can develop ourselves in the way we wish to be, constantly reaffirming and creating a supportive system for people who find themselves and want to continue with their true self and the true image, and they just want to discard the false image and they want to stay strong. I remember as a child, my auntie used to come to the house, and when she'd see me, "Obi, you're a brilliant girl." And I was like, yo, somebody knows.
This is the auntie that says, Obi, you're a brilliant girl. I'm filming you.
Obi, you're a brilliant girl. You know what you're doing. You know your job, baby.
Hey.
You got this, queen.
And I remember just thinking to I would never forget that, and she'd do it consistently. So over the years growing up, I just remember Auntie Messi thinks I'm brilliant, so what's the issue? Well, that was literally my saving grace for the longest time. Like, brilliant girl. Every time, like, out of nowhere, just open the door. Hi, Auntie Messi, brilliant girl. What? Sometimes this is what I use when I'm with little children. Are you somebody? Yes, my nieces, 2 hands. Good girl, are you sure? Yeah, good, well done. And like, children need to know that adults care. So for parents, don't forget to remind your children all the time, you're amazing, you're wonderful, you are brilliant, you are perfect just the way you are, you're enough. So that when they leave the home, there's no qualms. No matter what anyone says, no matter what friends are saying or trying to convince them that it's otherwise, they're going to remember what mum said, or remember what auntie said, or remember what uncle said, or remember what their sisters and brothers think. Reaffirm your loved ones, because you need to remind them that they should be the best versions of themselves, and they are enough. And I understand that sometimes we're in predicaments where we're in societies which have extreme propaganda, whether it's covert or classic, so where they're saying that this particular type of person is not good enough, whether they're saying that, you know, your country, your culture, and everything to do with your identity, your archetype is no, and this is what we want you to fit in. And sometimes we have to, you know, develop the courage and the strength and the boldness to just say no, switch off that channel, walk away. And like, if you can't see a reflection of yourself, you have to create it. So that's what I say to a lot of people. If it doesn't make sense, make it make sense. Assaulted if you haven't been assaulted because of your skin colour, if you haven't been assaulted because of your gender, if you haven't been assaulted because of the things you believe in politically, if you haven't been assaulted for your religion, that maybe you've had a good life, or maybe you've been safe so far. You literally have to walk away from situations that don't serve you. Going forward, the only way for like this to work, continuously talking about the things that we wish to achieve and just pushing us towards those goals, reminding one another that we are good. And remember, it is you who creates, so make it make sense.
5 stars.
She know she bad. This girl, she know.
The first stages of our life are very crucial in the developmental. The first stages of our life are very, very crucial in the developmental state. In the developmental.
A unicorn appears.
Have a nice day. So yeah, here we go. Hope you enjoy. Click subscribe and save and share the video as well. Like, well, watch it and share it and support. Okay.
Okay, I get what you're saying. You say you're ramping up your ability right now, but look, I don't have time for that. It needs to get done now. No, yes, I'm working. I'm at the office right now. Just listen to me. Just listen to me for a second, okay? All right, just calm down. No. Everything's cool, man. Everything's cool. Yeah, everything's good.